Hi everyone, this is Azzy from Jeep Forum, Cherokee Forum, Naxja, XJ Talk, a bunch of other places, and Azzy's Design Works, we have come up with a system to replace out this boring old gauge cluster, as you can see, with something a little bit more modern and built to customer specs. Why would you do it? Well, otherwise, there are a few options out there, and by all means, feel free to buy those if they're up your alley. There's ones that are backlit with EL, electroluminescent materials. They work. I don't think they look really great because they've got all these cutouts for all your different trouble lights and your turn signals and everything, and it's just kind of an add-in. There's a few out there with little paper add-ins that sit on top of the needles. You know, your mileage may vary with that stuff. I'm not going to begrudge any of those guys. It takes a little bit of engineering to come up with a good solution for this that's easy to use, and those may be easier to install. These do take a little bit of a technical skill set. If you can replace the radio in your Jeep, I think that you can update these. Before we go out to the Jeep today, the only thing we're going to need to take them apart and take the gauge set out is our Phillips screwdriver. Number 2 will work just fine, and a cell phone or a camera. This is a small digital camera, and you'll see why we need that in a few minutes. I also like to recommend having an OBD2 reader, an OBD2 scanner, ELM scan tools. There's a lot of them out there, and they interface with your phone, with a tablet, and you can see all the readings, and it gets a better setup for your calibration. So let's head on out to the Jeep and start taking that apart, and then we'll get into the actual installation of the gauge fix. Okay, we're out here in the XJ. We've had it running a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to take a picture of the dash. Excuse me, my trusty tablet here. I've had this running for a little bit. So everything's up to temperature. Everything's pretty much where it's going to be a little bit later whenever we start the vehicle again and put in our gauge kit. Your temperature, oil pressure when it's been running for about 15 or 20 minutes is all going to be about the same. So you have a good reference, and that's where the photograph comes in. Now we'll just take this, shut this off. Make sure our emergency brake's on, but that'll come into play in a minute. Set our key aside. We don't want to put that back in our pockets. We're going to be taking to that shortly. Because after we unplug all of our items here that we had in the dash, you're going to take the key in, and move the gear shift back. And what we're going to do is that'll allow us to get the center console piece off just a little bit easier. So actually, it's held on by friction clips. You can get started from the bottom and it'll pop. You can pull it out from the top. And with this in park, it's a lot, or in gear actually, it's a lot easier. Pull back in park, take your foot off the brake, emergency brake is along, and key out. And then we're ready to start on the rest of it. Now you notice one of the things we kind of skipped over was taking apart the dash. That was partially because the camera was taken apart and partially because it takes a long time. One of the things is getting this knob out. This is your headlight knob. This one is taken apart a few times, so popping it in on and off with the knob still in place is easy to do. While you have everything off here, if you look over to the side, looking in this angle, you see a little silver button behind a disc on the headlight switch housing itself, and that allows you to take this nifty little dial out. What you do is you get it out till its first extension, press that button in, let it go, press it in again, and it slides right out. And that's how you take that out. And that'll make getting this all back together a lot easier. Basically, you're going to need to take off this piece up here The piece covers the radio and the DIN slots. Plastic cover for the bottom down here, and this this metal kick plate underneath of it on the XJ, and then the bottom collar for your steering column. Took the top off here too, just because. And once you have that out, 4 screws for our cluster, and you just give it a good tug, a good pull, and it comes right out. If you've had a no DIN error or no bus error inside of your digital readout here for your mileage, one of the main causes for that is bad connection at these plugs, or these receptacles and these plugs over here. Make sure they're clean. Maybe hit them with a little bit of electric cleaner. Don't get it anywhere else in here. And a little bit of dielectric grease on these terminals, and that'll help keep any corrosion and make sure this stays no matter how humid it is or how nasty it gets inside of your Jeep, because dirt will get everywhere when you're going off-road a lot. Alright, our next step is to go in and swap this out. Okay, we're back inside. We've got our dash piece out here. This is actually one that we've pulled out of another vehicle. We've got it in a junkyard. It's kind of beat up, but it serves the purpose for showing you how to install on yours. This one is actually from a TJ. I'm not going to need any tools to take this apart, but some people do find it handy to use a fork, just a normal kitchen fork, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. First, remember, these are sensitive, delicate items. They're delicate electronics. They're not meant to be exactly serviced this way. We can't guarantee that if you mangle it somehow, that it's going to work again. So take your due diligence. I've made them work, but like I said, as these design works, we don't take responsibility for anyone's kind of ham-fistedness. So the first thing is to take off this clear plastic lid, and you'll see there are clips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 side ones here. The side ones, just press those in a little bit and lift that, and then you can take your thumb and press these up and out. This one's actually kind of out, and that clip's missing, which is a reminder, if you are doing this in the cold, there's a center clip too, so that'd be 6. If you're doing this in the cold, let these warm up a little bit. If it's in the middle of winter or whatnot, you don't want to break the plastic. The plastic gets a lot more brittle. So we'll take this, we'll set it aside. I like to set it so the outside is face down. Make sure you're not putting it on a scratched up surface or something like concrete, or you don't want to scratch up that face because you're going to be looking at it all the time. But it being up, we can use it as a tray to catch some of our parts. The next step is to flip this over. You'll see these black clips right here that hold in this surround. I'm going to go ahead and just, again, push them in with our thumb or finger. Once you get a couple of them out, the whole thing will start to come up and just pops off like that. Okay, we see the bulk of our gauge set here. Now, the one method to get the actual needles off is to use the tines of the fork. Set those underneath and just kind of use them to rock it straight up. Some companies ship these with a tool that actually looks like just 2 of the prongs there. But why ship out a tool that you're only going to use once and you probably have in your kitchen? But just try to make sure you're pulling, this goes straight up and down. We want it right up and down. I actually prefer to use the finger method. So I take my fingers here and I kind of grab it and pinch it and put even pressure and roll the tips of my fingers underneath. You'll feel the tension on it break and come out. And this has worked pretty well for me. This speedometer here is actually kind of messed up, so that's going to let go very easily. And just do that again. As you can see, just roll tips of fingers inwards and they pop out. Okay, one more step and we're ready to install. If you take a look here, you have these plastic clips to go around all the gauge holes. They're delicate. You can bend these real easy, you can break them. You can see this one's kind of broken already. And they are held in. Take one out. As you can see, there's two small clips there. Now you can push those clips in gently because this one actually bent this way from too much pushing. And you can't get replacements for these. Now those aren't 100% necessary. I would not get rid of them because they do hold everything nicely in place. And don't lose them because, again, you're not going to find them anywhere. I doubt Chrysler has a part for these. But if you got a set of fingernails, you could probably take these out without any assistance. I have been known to take just a simple pocket knife, put the tip, you'll see a little indentation in the face, and you can put the tip in and kind of push it in and coax it out. Not too hard. Like I said, these are delicate. So we got all those out. Now, this stock will be glued down, but not very hard. Enough that you can sit there and take and just put the edge of your knife in and pop it up. A little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue here, mainly around the actual gauges themselves. So that's where they're pointed on. Now you'll see here, this is why most of your gauges, no matter how you change your lights, they don't change. If you put in blue bulbs and expect it to be bluer, it still comes at that teal and XJ. Because this blue right here is actually molded into the plastic. There's no way getting around that. The teal and the XJ gauges is actually a layer underneath the here it's behind all this. You can't get it. So you could cover this up and we can make our insert kits to look, however we wanted, but you'd always be stuck with this kind of layout if you didn't take this piece of plastic out. So we're going to take this and that's just going to go somewhere else. We're not going to see it anymore. Now inside the package you get from Azzy's Design Works, there's a diffuser layer. There is a light blocking layer. And there is your top layer. Now I did not mention this, but because we don't have them on here, there are pins that your needles rest on. They go in these holes right here. I've since lost every pair of these. They're easy to lose, but they clip in, and you simply, once you have this face out, you squeeze from behind and pull it out. If you try to pull them out the front, you can snap them off. We learned that the hard way on this set over here, and then fiddling around in the back there. Yeah, let's get rid of that. So back to installing these. Now it's very simple. Now these are made out of quality signage materials. These materials are used in the sign industry. It's one of the fields we work in. And you'll see at the top of each of them are two holes, and they correspond to two pins in the plastic. So we're going to take our light diffusion layer, line that up on the pins down there, and you're going to take your light blocking layer, and this will keep the bleed over from happening from gauge to gauge and from trouble light to trouble light. And then we'll take our top layer. This one's our carbon fiber or carbon weave style 1 with the blue, the style 2, which we've just released on the website azzysdesignworks.com, and on the Facebook page you'll see has a little bit more of a detailed technical look. And we'll just set that one in there like that. That's pretty much all there is to do. Except for to take your snap rings here, I'm going to put them back into the holes. You can see that we've set our CNC cutter to cut those out. And cut spaces out. And that may be a little bit tight, and purposely did that so the whole face doesn't slide around. Before we go back out, you have two choices. You can put the black surround back on. If you painted it, make sure it's all dry, it's 100% dry, and your paint isn't just flaking off and it's had time to cure. You can put this back on and go out and put these in. I recommend that because if you have this on, it'll protect the needles while you're transporting it, because we're going to leave the top layer off. So what we are going to do here, I'm going to clip these all down into place. Make sure you don't have it bound up. If you're forcing anything and you're really struggling, take a look and make sure nothing's caught, because these come apart pretty easily. So there we have our cluster back in. And now I'm going to take and put these needles in approximately where they go at rest. I'm not going to push them in all the way. I'm going to get them in so you can feel that they're in there and they're not going to fall out if you flip it upside down. Because we are going to have to adjust these. Do our two larger ones first. Make sure they go straight in. You can see the little hole they got to go into in the center of the copper windings down here. Also remember, we're not going to turn these at all. Not within reason. Can't expect someone, you can see this one's just loose, but it's in here, it's not going to fall out. Same with this one, it's loose up and down. And this, your pins would also go back into these holes before you close this up. But all we're going to do is just set this on here, because we're going to have to take and adjust our needles most likely when it goes back into the vehicle. So we'll leave this off and we'll head out to our Jeep again. One thing to remember is start it up beforehand, just like we did before. Makes it a little bit easier and a little bit less time. So let's head back out to the Jeep. We've got our kit. And this is a scan tool I mentioned earlier. This plugs into the OBD2 port, and this will come in handy whenever we're resetting these. Otherwise, you're going to have to use the picture method, which does work, and I've seen it recommended by a few manufacturers in the past. But it's not exactly accurate. It doesn't, give you a good bit of confidence on how to set these up. So I would suggest, a lot of people have these. They're great tools for checking your own check engine light codes, and also checking. You can get different programs for tablets and for phones, and make Bluetooth and wireless versions, so you can see your stuff in real time, keep track of everything that's going on in your vehicle, and especially if you own multiple vehicles, it's almost an indispensable tool these days, and they're relatively cheap. I think this one with the software for a laptop cost about $50 on Amazon. Take our gauge set, make sure all our insulation there is out of the way. Plug it in, and you can feel it click into place. It doesn't really wobble anymore. You can screw it in now. I recommend, if you're going to go for a test drive, start this thing up and get it up to temperature before, so let it sit for about 15-20 minutes. If you're doing this relatively close to whenever you set it off, if you took the dash apart and then ran it, you can go a little bit, use it at your discretion. The more diligence you put into this, the more accurate they're going to come out. Now, the factory gauges were never super accurate. They're more of a guideline you know, you can definitely tell whenever you're having an overheat situation, you're going too fast. But they often say that the speedometer and some of your other gauges are up to about 10% off right from the factory when they were brand new. So take that in mind. We may actually make them work a little bit better. Now we've let our actually warm up a little bit, and all our temperatures should be back to normal. If you take a look, you'll see the gauges here are not exactly where they should be. It's idling a little bit high. We're going 25 mile an hour right now, and the temperature is somewhere where the block would have exploded a bit ago. So we're not going to fret there. This will be the time to take your phone or take your digital camera and match these gauges up with the picture you have. So if everything's warmed up and you know that when it's been sitting for 20 minutes and running and everything's normal, that right now your temp gauge should be about just a hair under 14, which this one was. We also know that our fuel was sitting just underneath the full mark. We set our miles per hour, and this is one of the reasons why we didn't put these in very loose. You'll notice if you pull it out a little bit, it'll just kind of flop around by itself. You just gently pull it out a little bit. Until it sits just perfectly. And you get a little bit of a push in, not too far. That's where those clips come in. They help keep it spaced out properly. We also know that we're actually sitting here idling about 800 RPM. The fuel pressure, according to our records and everything, they're about 40, and our temperature should be at about 210. If you have your scan tool unit, this will be the time to connect it. Well, depending on your manufacturer, you may have to connect it with the engine off and then start. This particular one, we can connect it just about any time we wish. And this will be the time to double check that your photograph and everything else is lined up. And I can tell from this that our revs are a little bit high, so I'm going to take them to here, where the engine computer is saying. And our fuel needs to be adjusted just a hair. And everything else looks about right. Now our next step, since we went through and checked all this stuff, is to go through the test pattern on the gauges. Now this is actually easier to do in the evening. You see, it's a nice day out, and it's a little bit hard to see all your lights lit up just generally. Let me take my sunglasses off so I can make sure I see everything right. Now it's key out, hold the trip reset button in. Then turn to run. Don't start it, just turn it to run. Now we'll go through and all your needles will move, go through their range. If you have everything set up, they should go back just fine and go back to their starting position. You see and then since we're in run, they'll go to where they're supposed to be. You see this one we had off just a little bit. Let's try that again. As we mentioned before, the speedometer gauge is all messed up. You see how it's very jerky there. And everything else seems to be seems to be in working order. You can see all our lights are working. This is, if you don't see your light working, you know you have that feature inside of the Jeep, this would be a good time to replace the bulbs before you put everything back in. Now, if your speedometer is off, I would double check this. Grab a friend and go for a ride down the road. Have them pay attention to the speedometer while you're paying attention to the road, and also pay attention to your scan tool or a GPS. This, again, is not a correction for adding larger tires. There's a gear that goes inside your transfer case that does that. This is only for adjusting, you know, the look. Now, if you know how much of a difference your speedometer was from the GPS beforehand, that's a perfect reference tool. This one, in fact, this tablet interface that we have will tell us the speed readout. So we can drive down the road a little bit, change it up, you know, we can pull over, change it. That's why I didn't put this plastic cover back on, and it is okay to drive this stuff off temporarily. I wouldn't do it very long. And then put everything back together. Now we've gone and clipped everything, we've checked it all out, took a little test drive with everything back together, or everything apart here, and safely recalibrated everything. And I'm content with how this is performing at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to snap back on the plastic cover. Make sure everything clips together. These side clips as well. And there we go. There we have it. Not a bad idea to make sure this is clean. And then we'll clip it back in. Okay, we got everything back together, and that's about it. That's how you update your gauges, or just if you're trying to figure out how to take them out and solve a no bus problem, that's pretty much how it goes. Make sure everything's in place. You know, if you leave things loose, that's where you're gonna hear all your rattles and squeaks and everything. So until next time, thanks a lot. Thanks for your interest, and any questions, check out our website, check out Jeep Forum. I'm Azzy. AzzysDesignWorks.com is the website, and we're also on Facebook. Thanks again. Have a good one.